Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Cuddy from the Chicago Humanities Festival, and it is my pleasure, my thrill to invite you to today's program with the amazing musician, singer, songwriter, Grammy award-winning musician, and now best-selling author, Tori Amos. It's noon, it's midday lunchtime here in Chicago, but I know we've got people from around the world already gathering together, really excited to have this conversation and hear Tori talk about her new book, Resistance, a songwriter story of hope, change, and courage. We can all use hope, change, and courage in these moments. So thanks to all of you for being here. I really encourage you to think about getting more involved with the Humanities Festival. This book really resonates with our mission, which is gathering people together. We think that these kinds of conversations and performances that we host throughout the year are not only great cultural experiences, they're a civic good. They're ways to build community, they're ways to build solidarity. So go to Chicago Humanities Festival to find out more, how you can participate, donate, become a member, find out more about our upcoming programs. We have an event tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central with Eric Kleinenberg talking about the pandemic and Chicago, both then and now. And then next week, we're going to do a deep dive into Englewood, a community on Chicago's South Side, with Tanika Johnson and Aisha Butler talking about how the pandemic is affecting their community and how they're rallying to work to get through it. So don't miss those. Please join us for those. You can participate today by supporting Tori by buying a copy of Resistance, and we really encourage you to do that through our partner bookseller, Seminary Co-op. They're a nonprofit independent bookseller. They're on the south side of Chicago in Hyde Park, an important part of the community. So support Tori, support the Seminary Co-op, get a copy of Resistance. So I'm very thrilled that the AV Club is partnering with us on today's program, and Katie Rife, who's a senior writer with the AV Club based here in Chicago, will be holding the conversation with Tori. So they'll talk, and then they're going to take questions from people who submitted some questions in advance. So thanks to all of you who did that, who asked questions, and I'm really looking forward to a fantastic conversation. So at this point, let's all give a virtual welcome, or a virtual thank you rather, to our captioner. No matter where we program, whether it's in a building in Chicago or here in virtual space, we make sure that our programs are accessible. So thanks to our captioner for providing that today. And now let us give our most heartfelt, rock and roll, thrilling welcome to Katie Rife and the amazing Tori Amos.
Hey. Welcome.
Hi, Katie.
It's such an honor to talk to you, Tori. Your book is incredible. I loved, it's a wonderful blend of, lyricism and practicality, which I really liked.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Yeah, and there's a passage, the basic premise, Resistance, it's about creating art in the face of despair. And there's a passage in the book which you couldn't have written knowing about COVID, but it really struck me as very relevant to what we're going through right now. So I'd like to read it real quick. One day we are just taking for granted that we are achieving what we set out to do that day. We are in our routine. Not that there can't be challenges, but we get through them. And then a hurricane, a fire, a mass shooting, a terrorist attack. An event forces us to cope with something we have not rehearsed for. I have looked up and out, desperately talking to anyone, saying, "Help, please help. I am not prepared for what is in front of me." And sometimes I am met with no answer, a deafening response, no song at all. Not in that moment. We have all been forced to sit with ourselves, feeling not like we are made of star stuff, but feeling overwhelmed. Where is the blueprint for this emotion? Then there are devastating effects that affect not just family and friends, but a whole community, a city, something even greater. Some people use a tragic event to twist the narrative and push their own political agenda. These are the warlords of hate. Others work through a tragedy by figuring out ways to process grief. And we all grieve differently. Some of us shut down, some of us reach out, some of us lash out. Some hours of the day convulse with torrents of shock. In other moments, we find ourselves left with a bleak numbness. Collective trauma is its own energy. Yeah.
Well read, Katie, and hi everybody. Thank you for being here with us. It's just amazing the support we're all getting right now from you, the community. So thank you. Yeah, what times, Katie? What times?
Yeah. Well, in the book, you talk a lot about your creative process, which is sort of the practical aspect that I was talking about. And I was wondering, since, you talk a lot about creativity informed by collective trauma, has anything come back to speak to you since the lockdown started and since the pandemic really picked up speed?
Well, yes, because who could have imagined? I certainly couldn't have imagined that on New Year's Eve, when we were there in Florida, and saying goodbye to 2019 and welcoming 2020, thinking, oh my goodness, what the future holds here, an election year, and there could be really great change coming for us as a country and for a globe. And then something cataclysmic like this has happened. And in my life, I've never experienced anything not quite like this. We've had tragedy before. I talk about it in the book different times, 9/11 being one of them. And yet, 2 weeks later, we were touring and we were able to gather together. And when we gather together, the Tori community, there's a real collaboration. There's an exchange that happens. People tell me their stories. They give me information. They're intel. They really are. The boots on the ground group. And so you learn a lot from people's perspectives about what's happening, and then it helps me process what's happening. So the idea that the book tour was canceled, and yes, it's amazing to do these things, having to adapt to this new world that we seem to be in for a while at least. I terribly miss that the meet and greets, the sharing, because that's how I grow. So there's been a bit of grieving, if I'm honest with you, on my part. I've had to grieve not going on the book tour and seeing people and looking them eye to eye. And also, we were planning to tour this fall, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's mixed with the grieving, though. There's hope that creativity is coming, and that as a songwriter, I need to answer what people are going through at this time.
Something that I hear discussed quite a bit during the COVID era, and I have struggled with myself, is balancing, an opportunity for creative growth with needing space for grieving. How do you navigate, how do you leave space for that in a world that's really focused on productivity?
Well, I'm allowing myself to feel what I'm feeling, but I might take myself away in a room so that I'm not bringing everybody down with me. We have a full house here. And so I think being a full house, it's made me realize that when I'm in the mom role too, and the wife role, that I need to take my despondency away. And I do step into that once in a while, just because I'm not sure when we'll tour again. We'll get through it. We will tour. We'll be out there together, but not when I thought we were going to be. So, and there aren't answers when that will happen until there's a vaccine. I don't know. It just seems we have to be safe and protect each other. So yes, I'm having to find that balance and then push myself at times, because I work through things mostly through creating. That's how I figure out what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
So therefore, I have to kind of, push myself.
Yeah, this is something you talk about in the book, how, if you sit around and wait for the muses to come, you might wait forever.
That's right. That's right. And I think we're all in this together, in that I think people are having different challenges.
Mhm.
And I know somebody who's terribly lonely right now because they're alone.
Mhm.
And my husband would give anything to be alone right now. He'd trade places with you, whoever you are. And so I think people work through things differently. We process issues differently. So if you are the type of person that needs to take your space and think things through, then if you have a full house and you're following the rules, then you don't have that way of processing right now. And then if you're somebody who works things out by sitting down with your friends, I know somebody very well who's like this, and I love her dearly. And she just said to me, look, I normally go and meet my friends, and that's how we work things. She's a great friendship circle. And they sit down at each other's houses and share in that way. And I know there's Zoom, I know there are other things, but she doesn't feel that it's the same. So you're hearing a lot of people's different challenges, what it's bringing up for us, this lockdown.
Yeah, that's another thing that struck me in the book. You talk a lot about receiving letters from people and talking with people, and you tell a story about carrying letters from Ukraine and Russia in your purse when you were in Turkey. Is it's something that strikes me as it must take a lot of grace to hold all of those feelings from everyone and yourself at the same time and not become overwhelmed.
Well, I don't know. I think it's a huge gift.
Yeah.
Getting these letters, it I don't feel so alone.
Okay.
Because and you're being entrusted with somebody's story. So that really, I've been doing it for many years now. I think I started getting letters in 1992. I was touring in 1991, but I was opening for somebody, and that kind of ritual hadn't begun to happen yet, but it started to happen. And so just it's been part of not just touring, but people will send me letters, find ways to get me letters, and I learn a lot from that process. So I don't see it as overwhelming
Mhm.
to hold that energy. Also, I guess I don't know, maybe there's a grounding that happens. The muses are very helpful
Oh.
because when I'm reading these, there's an energy that's similar to, I don't know, being
Mm.
supported by the muse energy when
Mhm.
I'm reading. And God, I learn a lot from these letters. And sometimes I don't answer as well as I wish I did. There was one letter I got over a year ago, and it was about somebody who'd lost their mother.
Mhm.
And I sent this person a message, and I'm very sorry that I didn't know what to say. And until I lost my mother, I didn't realize the grief she was going through. I
Mhm.
just didn't know. I thought I had empathy, and I did, but I just couldn't imagine until I lost Mary, and of course, Beanie Nancy Shanks. But I just didn't know what that felt like.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the process of developing empathy is something that's lifelong, it seems.
Mm, yeah, yes, because we're taught to say things when somebody has died. And I realize that those aren't the things that maybe this person needed to hear at the time. Now that I've experienced it, I respond differently
Yeah.
because there's a knowing. And the grieving process for me with Mary was really there. There were some dark days, And I write about it in the book pretty openly.
Yeah, very moving. I honestly, I cried. It was very moving pages.
I think that writing, being able to write that was the turning point in my grief.
Mm-hmm.
And also I got close to Mary through writing those. It's almost as if she was there with me.
Yeah.
And so once I wrote those, the editor called me and said, okay, the good news and the bad news is I think you found the voice for the book, and now you need to go rewrite the rest. So that was, yeah, that happened.
Great job. Here's some homework.
Yeah, he's a good editor. Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads me to one of the questions that was submitted. I'll read that now. It comes from Bryce Jans. Please forgive me, Bryce, if I said your name wrong. They write, hey, Tori, how would you compare the writing process for your book to that of writing a song? You already answered part of this. Do you feel like bits and pieces are brought at different times, or do you know sitting down what book you wanted to write?
Well, the direction of the book changed. There's no question about it. I started writing it January 2018, I believe. And Rakesh had seen me at the Beacon in New York on the 2017 Native Invader Tour. And so he said to me, I think we need to answer what's happening in the country and authoritarianism and your take on that. And this attack on almost everybody that's happening. And so I started from that point of view. And then it started to change. And I think if I'm really honest with you, it started to change gradually. And it's different than writing songs because I have the music. And having the music, that's my first language. So that being taken away, although songs are used as a time machine in the book, still not having that music was really at times intimidating. To stare at that blank sheet of paper and just going to the piano and underscoring. Sometimes I'd be underscoring myself.
Yeah.
Come on, you have to move this forward, move this pen forward. But a blank piece of paper can be really scary stuff. So yeah.
Sorry, it kind of strikes me as you being creatively bilingual then, if you're using the piano to help you write for the page.
Well, the piano is just this amazing creature. She's an amazing being and friend, and isn't catty, doesn't betray, doesn't make me feel bad that I haven't achieved something that day. It's always a willingness to want to collaborate. When I pass her, she's just ready to go. And so sometimes I'm not ready to go. I'm not ready here. And yeah, I could sit down and play, but there are times with the songwriting process where I'm researching demos that I've made on my little device. In the old days, it was a cassette recorder. But I document, even if it's an 8-bar phrase, 2 bars, it could be anything. I document it and I know the date. And there's usually a little note I write to myself. And so I'm able to go back. So it might be August 6th, 2019. It's called something and it says check December 12th, 2019, and then compare it with March 5th, 2020. And there's a link here. And so it's about then seeing these sprinkles that the muses might have given and then pulling them together. So that's that process.
Yeah.
But that's been going on since I can remember. Whereas I had to find slightly a different process, and I had to find the rhythm, I guess, of writing a book.
Yeah. I have a question, actually. This is something that I'm curious about for myself, and I hope other people would be too. When you talk about hearing the muses or different things coming to you in different there's a part in the book where you talk about maybe a photograph or a tarot spread or something like that will give you a seed of a song. How do you develop, this, the listening to that? How do you learn how to tap into that, to listen, to pick up what they're trying to tell you?
Well, it takes concentration,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you get into a chop wood carry water sort of serving,
Mm.
and you have to listen. I find I have to listen sometimes with all my might, because I can, as the scribe, I can mess it up. So I'm trying to not mess with it, so it can come through, and then I can work with it. And it's just a skill of trying to stay out of the way when I know they're coming. And then sometimes they've gifted something, and then they seem to depart. It feels more like I'm working with it, and it's really an adjustment you feel. It's an energetic adjustment. But I know when I'm writing it and when it's coming from this otherworldly place. I call it the muses because it makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can call it all kinds of things: intuition, creativity. There's a lot of words you could use.
Yeah, the universe.
Yeah, the universe.
The force.
Sure. Is that where something I would love to, I mentioned the practical aspects of the book. I really liked how you laid out the different steps of songwriting. Is that kind of where the steps come in? It helps you kind of take this information and work it into a song or a book, or how does that factor in?
Well, you mean the bit about intaking and outputting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, so many writers in the last, I don't know, maybe year, I've been hearing about when they feel that they're in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we can all have periods of time when we're just not feeling very motivated.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, to me, part of living. That's natural. That's so natural to me. I don't really see it as being in a rut. I just see it as cyclical. And so that's when I usually take in, I take in other bits of information or somebody else's work, whether it's sonic or whether it's visual or a bit of both. And then that usually helps me as I'm collecting new inspirations. Then all of a sudden, I feel drawn to working with the piano. Sometimes I have to do my part. I can't just wait for the lightning bolt to happen. And then you can't do that. You have to do your part. And research is a part of that. And there's so many things that do end up in the song graveyard that don't make it on a record because it's not quite there. And that's okay. I don't see that as demoralizing. I see that as just part of being a songwriter. I've talked about this with other writers, particularly people who write books, and they'll talk about having many drafts and just honing it and working through it, and not getting bummed about it, but embracing that. And I think that's the key when you buy into, and I'm sorry if you're offended that I say this, but if you buy into writer's block, then you can become part of it without really wanting to become part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy into that. I don't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's like the seasons. There are times when I'm taking information in, and there are times when I'm putting it out, and that can be all in one day, or sometimes it's not all in one day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it reminds me of another question. Let me read that real quick. This one comes from Holly. She says, the world has a lot for us to resist right now. And I look to your words to find strength and motivation. Personal, political, and environmental challenges are seemingly at a peak. What's your advice to people who feel overwhelmed and like it's all too big to fight? How do we challenge complacency and feeling exhausted and defeated by it all?
Well, there are going to be those days. I mean, there are days when we all have a little cry, most of us anyway, and that is natural. Our whole world is turned upside down right now, and we don't know exactly when things, if they'll go back to the way they were before, or if we'll move forward and we'll find new ways of doing things. I think there are a lot of things we don't know. And the not knowing can make us all feel like we just want to pull the covers up because
Yes.
it's safer under the covers
Yeah.
than with your head peeking out, not knowing, sort of into an abyss of, uh.
Yeah.
And so I get it. I am totally get it. I realize if we knew when we could go and it would be safe and allowed that we can meet and do live concert again, that would be a relief. But there's so many things we don't know, including that. So yeah, I do think that writing towards that, sometimes writing about it.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't get out of bed today. I'm going to put covers on my head. There are many better ways to say that. But I mean, it's okay. And that might end up in your song graveyard and not on your record, but that's all right. I think there are a lot of things that I work through by writing a little ditty that no one should ever hear. Truly.
Well, I mean,
I've won for every senator almost.
Oh, wow.
Over the last year. Oh yeah, my Lindsey Graham is good.
Oh, wow. Are those the in the book you talk about some angry songs that you're like, well, let's just put that over there.
Yeah, we'll put that over there. But you know, there might be some shakers on the new record. I think that some of our leaders have a lot to answer for, and during this time where people are going through so much, the question is, who are the leaders that are trying to help the public, and who are the ones that aren't, that are really just trying to score points? And
Yeah.
so, do I think that they might get a song? Oh yeah, why not? Why
You're
not?
right.
Why not? If you're called to write about something and you feel passionate about it, then I say yes. Because I'd love to hear that from all of you, what you're passionate about.
Well, it reminds me, this is a bit of a variation on a theme that we've been talking about throughout, but I wanted to make sure to get Misty May Fredono's question in. How has COVID-19 changed the meaning of resistance, the title of the book and the basic concept for you?
Well, it is resisting the idea of giving up. And when I say giving up, I'm talking about the little things. Giving up resilience. Giving up the passion to hold leaders accountable. We have to, in this, remember that there is a democracy at stake, in my opinion, and in other people's opinion too. And what does that mean? Well, that's why we have our minds and our emotions. These are powerful things. They're really powerful. And no, we're not gathering together to voice what we're feeling at this time, but there are other ways to voice it. And I think that we really have to remember who we are. We're here to, I think, step into questions of what kind of world do we want? What is this pandemic teaching us?
Right.
What kind of world do we want to live in? And what kind of leaders do we want to have?
Yeah.
It's real questions. And so I think that this this lockdown, yes, it is making some of us sit with ourselves, and in husband's case, sit with all of us. I think you'd rather be on a Buddhist retreat, but there you go. And you're there, you're in the situation you find yourself in, and there's an opportunity. There's absolutely an opportunity to learn and grow and create and really feel this. And these feelings are enormous.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been under global house arrest. If you've been following the rules, we have. There's just no two ways about it. So, and what does that mean? What does that feel like? What does that bring up in you? What issues are coming up for you? This is gold. This is emotional gold. It really is. It's I know you're saying I can hear somebody somewhere, and it might be it might be out there. Well, some people can't, pay their house payments with thoughts. No? And some people are going through very, very, very hard times right now. There's no question about it. But we have our minds, we have our emotions, we have our spirituality, and we have our physicality.
Mhm.
So it's how we utilize all that in this time. And we can do it. We can get through this. But we have to be resilient.
Well, it reminds me of another passage from the book where you were speaking about people in Russia and how you say literally they use art to cling to life, like memorizing passages from novels or songs, that sort of thing.
Yes, that's right. They arm themselves with art, and they find ways. It's almost as if whether it's poetry or passages from a novel or songs or a visual or a ballet, things that they etch in their chakra field
Mm-hmm.
that they surround themselves with in order to combat technological warfare, which they were trying to warn me about. And they understand on a level that Westerners just didn't understand until possibly recently. And even still, I don't know if we realize how good certain people are at grooming other people
Mm-hmm.
to agree to their philosophy and their ideology, how they divide somebody from a thought. They told me, they said, Tori, all of you can be groomed and not even know it. And I went, really? He said, absolutely. You don't even know why you're not going to vote, but you're so worked up that you're just not going to do it. Or you're going to vote over here, which will give the vote to over there. So you're not really thinking about how this is playing out.
Right.
So that was intriguing to me, here getting those letters, speaking with them on the 2014 tour.
Yeah, it's almost like art as like psychic self-defense, you know?
That's right.
Yeah, it's a shield you can build around yourself.
That's right. That's right. And
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I really admire in this book, on a slightly different note, is, if you're in a place where you feel defended, and strong enough to deal with it, you talk about failure in your life in the book. And that, I think, is really honest and upfront, because a lot of people don't want to talk about that stuff. They kind of just want to sweep it under the rug. What has failure taught you?
Well, geez. Failure, that was the key for me. And it isn't the key for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the key for me for my reckoning. What is my intention as an artist? What can I not abide?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point of I couldn't abide being disingenuous anymore with my art. And I just had to really come to terms with that, because I had bought in to the idea of commercial music and what that meant. And and filling a slot. And so the record industry would have slots for people. And
Right.
some people would refuse to become part of that and stick to their artistry, and the doors would open for them, and that worked. But I betrayed my vision because I just was getting rejected a lot, and so with my demos, and finally I said, okay, I'll write what I think is commercial, and that wasn't really the path that empowered me. So I had to make that decision, and it was through um, not having success where I said, I'm not going through that again. If people don't want to listen to what I'm doing, if I feel like I've stayed true to the muses that I serve and to the message that I want to put out there, then if nobody's there, I can wake up in the morning um, and not be disgusted with myself. And that
Yeah.
was the pact.
Yeah. And that being so much more important than being famous or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, but I had to get there, Katie.
Yeah.
I did, because fame and the thought of what it really is different than what I thought it was. And you have to make your peace with it and understand the double-edged sword that it can be, the seductiveness of it, and the acceptance, this kind of acknowledgement when you really have to say to yourself, no, I need to do work that I respect, and if it doesn't get acknowledgement, does that mean it's worthless?
Right.
So it was really about, what do you value? What's your intention? And there are some people, and I have no qualms against this. Not all are guys either, but a lot of them are, where it's just, and I can't do the accent, where I want fast cars, cute birds, and to be, and you go, okay, put it out there, honey. That's what you want.
If it makes you
Okay.
happy, I guess.
That's what you want. No judgment. But it just cute birds and fast cars didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Wanting that, it just didn't work for me.
Yeah. And that also, I mean, we're talking about a lot of lifelong processes here, you know, developing empathy, understanding yourself. Those are things I know that when I was in my early 20s, I didn't understand myself in the same way I do now, you know?
That's really tricky. How did you understand yourself? How did you find that?
I fell on my face a lot.
Oh.
You know, you have to fail to know what works and what doesn't sometimes, I think. And
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also think sometimes, we're back to slots, is that whether it's in your friendship circle or your family or your school or whatever, even if it's not with your friends but with your associates, and sometimes we kind of what do you call it, dilute ourselves down or turn part of the volume of another side of our personality up to kind of make the group, to have your place in the group. And wow, that usually doesn't work out so well, because that's not how you find out who you really are.
mm-hmm.
And what feels good in your skin. And it's fine. I think it's finding all those things.
Yeah.
And that's a journey. That's really a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me, I'm gonna work in another question here. This is something that I know a lot of people struggle with when they're women. This is a question about women supporting women. And when you're younger, sometimes you don't necessarily understand the value of it. You can fall to what I call Smurfette syndrome sometimes.
Oh, I like that, Smurf. Okay.
Yeah. So this question is, okay, it's from Jennifer. As women, we talk about how to stand up to bullying men, but sometimes in the process, we tear other women down. To fix that, what's one important thing you believe women can do to support each other?
Huge question.
Yeah.
Huge. Because I think, Katie, too, though, we have to talk about harem mentality.
Okay.
And I think we need to talk about opportunities. So I can only speak from my own experience. And in the 90s, in the alternative side of music, if they were playing two women at some alternative stations, they were playing one too many.
Sure.
So do you see the dynamic that gets set up? I can talk about it now in reflection because I can see it now. But you're as an industry, not just the record labels, but the radio stations themselves, the advertisers, who I mean, I gotta say this country music station Tash had me listening to around Christmas time because we love singing our heads off with the windows rolled down in the truck and high heel boots or whatever to country music in Florida. I don't know. It's just a reaction to Florida man, I think.
I'm
But
from
anyway,
Ohio, I get it.
yeah, we get it. And so, and Tash looked at me and said, "Mom, they hardly play any women." I said, I know that one. I know that one. And what happens is that a culture can develop. Just let's test drive this thought, Katie. A culture can develop, unfortunately, where they get you to believe there's only room for a couple.
Right.
And then the problem is when you realize that, say, let's cut to now, to 2020.
Okay.
That you're being told by people in the industry that not as many women of a certain age in the alternative side are getting record contracts as men. And so I asked somebody about this in the industry within the last couple of years, and they said to me, well, T, it's really about supply and demand. I said, that's a cop-out. That's an absolute cop-out because people don't know that they want it yet. They don't realize that they want wisdom and experience if they're not being shown it and given the choice to have it. So I guess what I want to say is that we have to understand that we need to create opportunities for more women. And I'm saying this to myself. It's difficult when you're in a culture that sets them up against each other. And then we have to break down those concepts and refuse to become a part of it. But it was very tricky in the 90s to get through that because the reality was they might be playing two women and 60 men.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the reality. That was the reality.
And like you said, that was one too many, right?
Yeah, that was one too many. So I think now we're beginning to have conversations that we haven't had before in the last couple years, and they're really important conversations about opportunities and supporting each other, realizing that no one can be you if you're really doing you. I can't be Katie. Only Katie can be Katie, and only Tori can be Tori, and that's what we need to support. The idea that you're soaring and opportunities are coming to you doesn't mean that I have to fail. But what I am saying is there were a lot of female artists that were worthy, that were good, that weren't getting any play and were getting dropped after 2 records because it was bloody brutal. It was brutal. And it was a boys' club, and there were women that were complicit in it and supported this kind of thinking, and advertisers, because a lot of advertisers would say, well, we don't want that message getting played, especially if they're anti-choice. And you know you've got a feminist there.
Sure.
Come on, all that's going on.
Yeah.
So we have to be aware, now that we have the internet, we have to be aware that we can support more artists. And if you ask yourself, well, whatever happened to so and so back in the 90s or back in the noughties. Well, I've been saying this. Don't just assume that they ran off with a gazillionaire and didn't want to make music again. They
Sure.
probably had the opportunity taken away from them because they might have upset somebody, because that's how the bloody business works.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah. Well, that also, so our last audience question that we got was from, let's see, it's from Kimberly in Memphis. And Kimberly asks, talking about now and these new opportunities we have, what advice do you have for teenagers who are finding their authentic voice as songwriters entering into this new world? How can they contribute to resistance in these times?
wow. Well, it is about finding your voice. And sometimes I found one thing. This might feel good to you or not, and trust yourself, obviously. But when I wanted to try on different potential sides to myself or personalities that I didn't know I had because I didn't know, I discovered myth when I was in high school, mythology. I think it was Edith Hamilton, one of her books.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning, that was the tipping point where I started to read about mythology and other myths. And finally, I did a record called American Doll Posse that was trying on um, the different goddesses that were in the Greek myth. So trying on those energies and then writing songs for them and dressing like them. And I found sides to myself I didn't even know I had, because I had decided what I was going to be and what I was not going to be. And then that didn't work out so well after a while, because I realized, well, I had judged that this type of woman was not respectable, or this type of woman, you see. So I really needed to let the myths to kind of invade and to work with them. And I began to find that all of the women in Greek myth, there's a side to all of them that lives here. And different percentages. That's really what I began to discover. It wasn't just one. It wasn't just one that I gravitated toward. And some, again, less than others, but it was a good exercise to really push that artist, who am I as an artist question out there, and allow it to percolate, and not be just, I don't know, this is all I am as an artist, and I'm not going to put my foot in the danger pool, because I do think you have to experiment. It's fun to do that. You
Sure.
can always come back out of that pool.
I mean, you chuckled a little bit, but playing dress up can be part of it, trying on different styles and hair and stuff like that.
And why not? Exactly. Why not?
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you. I'm so happy that we got to talk. This was so insightful.
Well, Katie, I've really enjoyed this. And I hope when I'm touring again, please come back and see me. We'll have a cup of tea.
Oh, I would love that.
Big hugs, real hugs. And I just want to say big hugs to everybody listening.
Hugs.
These aren't easy times. And you're loved. And your questions are amazing. If we didn't answer them, it's not because we didn't want to. It's just the time. So thank you, and big love.
Love to you too. Thank you so much for all the inspiration and the music over the years. And please check out Tori's book. It's amazing.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Katie.
You. Bye.